to the latest episode of The Federal's Worldly Wise, a weekly video show that looks in detail at trending international issues. A draft peace deal between Russia and Ukraine appears to be growing through its final stages before a final agreement. Powered by US President Donald Trump, the agreement will put an end to the nearly 4-year war. There are obstacles still to be tackled before an agreement is reached, but before that, what are the chances of an agreement? Are the proposals realistic? Who stands to gain? Who stands to lose? To discuss these questions, we have with us the Federal's consulting editor, K.S. Dakshina Murthy, who closely tracks international developments. Welcome to the show, sir. So my first question is, how realistic are the chances of peace between Ukraine and Russia?
Surprising as it may seem, the chances of peace deal are quite realistic. There is a sense of wariness that the war that has been going on for nearly 4 years. Both Ukraine and Russia would want peace. At the same time, in what manner? But fundamentally, in principle, it is enough. There is a sense that both feel that the war has been going on for too long. That is one thing. Secondly, there is a danger of a stalemate where neither Russia nor Ukraine makes any dramatic changes. There is a sense of, the relationship has become pretty tense. And it looks like the war can continue for a very long time, and whether either of them can sustain it. And the other part, the issue is that the entire world is looking at this war. It's affecting the world's economy. It's disrupted a whole lot of issues amongst nations. So all these things put together, the chances of a peace deal, look pretty good, and especially the United States is completely at it, and Donald Trump, with his characteristic zeal, is making sure that the whole thing is done, the deal is done. So it looks quite realistic that a peace deal can happen. Now, how fair it is, that is a different question, but it will happen.
Okay. So to attain that peace, what are the obstacles that need to be overcome?
Okay. So like I said, in principle, both the countries, both Russia and Ukraine, want to end the war. So does Europe. The NATO allies of the US, also want to end the war. But there are some very key issues. At least three of them. The first major one is the issue of the eastern Ukraine, right from Crimea up towards the Donbass, the entire Donbass region. In fact, about 20% of Ukrainian land is today occupied by Russian troops. And the issue is now the US is asking Zelensky to forego this land and let the Russians take over formally. Okay, now this is something which is very, very crucial because it's a very sensitive issue. It impinges on nationalism. There could even be a kind of a revolt against Zelensky. So it is a tricky issue. So this needs to be tackled. This is a main thing. And as far as Russia is concerned, Russia is not willing to forego the territories that it has occupied because it sees this as a security buffer for Russia against any kind of intimidation or belligerence from NATO or the West. So that is one thing. Second thing is Russia wants Ukraine to limit its troops to not more than 600,000. Now, this is again something that directly affects Ukraine's sovereignty. So there is a kind of a reluctance to do this. Now, why Russia is asking this is to ensure that Ukraine in future does not, become stronger or, with the power of the West, do anything or attack Russia. It's like a security guarantee for Russia. This is the second thing. The third thing is NATO membership. See, if you recollect, the war started with this as the main thing. So the Russia insists that Ukraine can never ever join NATO. It's a like a forever for life kind of thing, So this is something that Ukraine and even the NATO allies in Europe are not very happy with. But Trump is insisting that Zelensky should accept it. But this is an obstacle because it's so if the agreement comes through, NATO will be Ukraine will be out of any NATO membership forever. So this is another thing that Putin has been insisting. So these three are very crucial issues that needs to be overcome.
What are the NATO nations doing about this? Are they helping or making it difficult for a deal to go through?
The NATO allies in Europe, especially the UK, Germany, France, I mean, they are really, in many ways, upset with the US and Trump for arm twisting Zelensky, because as far as Europe is concerned, they do not want to give in to Russian demands. Okay, because as we see it now, it looks like a deal that favors Russia. So Europe doesn't want that to happen. What the European nations are saying is that you are rewarding somebody who was the country that actually triggered the whole war. I mean, if you recollect, it was Russia which invaded Ukraine. So it's like rewarding this action. So Europe is not very happy at all with this arrangement. But there is some kind of of course, the talks are still on. The final word is not yet out. There is some kind of an attempt to broker some kind of a little bit of to soften this thing. Like, for instance, this NATO membership, could be for a certain period of time that Ukraine will not join NATO for a certain period of time. After that, it's, it's open. And the other thing is that Europe does not want Ukraine to commit itself to limiting its troops to 600,000. So it wants it to be free to, have its defense the way it looks at. And even as far as the territory is concerned, it's not very comfortable with allowing Russia to take over 20% of Ukraine's territory. So Europe is not happy at all. And Europe is trying its best to prevent a deal that goes so openly in favor of Russia. So, in fact, if you in the initial stages when the war began, it was Europe and Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, who prevented a peace agreement at that point. See, in the first few weeks after the war, it would have been a lot easier for a deal to come about, because Russia wouldn't have occupied all these territories. And it was still in the initial stages. There were peace talks that were happening between Ukraine and Russia, but Europe intervened and convinced Zelensky not to go in for any kind of an agreement with Russia. So that standstill continues. And Trump. That is one of the reasons why Trump ignored the EU. In fact, in all these peace deals, Trump has actually not taken the advice of Europe. Europe has kind of forced itself into this talk so that it can look relevant. So Europe is a issue here. How Europe thinks is definitely an issue in how the peace talks progress.
Okay, so why is Trump so keen on getting this peace deal done?
Yeah, okay. So Trump, has been constantly saying, especially in the second term after he returned to office, that he wants to be a peacemaker. And, he is, in fact, he's been saying it time and again that he ended the war between India and Pakistan, that limited conflict after the Pahalgam attack, etc., in May this year. Then he also has claimed credit for about 6 to 7 other conflicts around the world. And of course, the latest one was he ended the Israeli assault on Gaza. And that ceasefire, with some difficulty, is still holding. So he wants to be seen as a peacemaker. And he has made no bones about his wish to get a Nobel Prize, Peace Prize. In fact, he was really hoping for it this time. But anyway, he was passed over. So that is one thing. Secondly, Trump, during his election campaign to become president, had promised that he would end the war. In fact, if you remember his famous statement, he said he would end the war in one day after he took over. That was his statement. So he's been, because the US is spending a lot of money, millions of dollars are being spent in this war. And the US does not see any great kind of benefit from this. And the US itself is in some kind of an economic crisis. Prices are high. There is in fact, a lot of pushback against Trump's rule. His popularity is dipping. So there is some kind of a crisis within the US, economic crisis. And, amidst all this, to be funding a war, which nobody really, is not sure who's going to benefit from, is another reason why Trump is pushing for it and wants to end it.
Thank you for your insights, sir.